Hi, welcome to episode 10 of the Aspiecast. About almost 6 months since the last one. It's now April 2016, and I have more reason to explain about the lack of episodes. Basically, it ends up coming down to depression, and the idea is I'm trying to avoid thinking about a lot of the shameful stuff, and as a result, it's not just this Aspiecast that gets delayed, but life gets on hold sometimes because I'm trying to figure out ways to avoid thinking about my past, and the only way to do that is filling my time with things that sort of preoccupy me in ways that are fun. And fun could unfortunately mean hanging out at a bar. I'm doing better with that, thank God. I'm not having as much of a drinking problem as I probably did, or definitely did, let's say over the last 5 years, because the drinking was a great escape from stuff, and I actually had wonderful interactions with people, as I may have mentioned in the past. But that's actually been going away from my pattern and my habits, and the problem is there's not much else to fill that void. So there's more sleeping going on and other things that I just want to try and do to get away from thinking about some of the shameful stuff that really bogs me down. And for more about shame, I did talk about that in another episode, but I will expound on that a little bit this time as well. Anyways, just to recap, the Aspiecast was originally intended to be a weekly podcast, and because of the depression that I suffer, I can't actually stand sometimes to think about a lot of the shameful stuff that is good topics for this podcast. And the shameful stuff, it turns out shame is a really powerful, long-lasting emotion that has some good effects for society and some really bad effects for people if they've got a lot of it or too much of it. There's a book that I started called Healing the Shame That Binds You, and that book is a little too technical for my taste, and I haven't gotten through it, but it does mention toxic shame, and I think that's one of the issues that I have. The reason I'm bringing that up is that when I first discovered Asperger's, it did relieve me a lot of the shame that I had always felt, because I was always ashamed or had some bad feelings about interactions with people, and the interactions where people would get really pissed at me for reasons that I just didn't understand. And the appearance in my realm of understanding of Asperger's syndrome really made me feel better, because I realized I didn't have to be ashamed. But the problem is, now that I've had a couple of years to digest all this stuff, I still realize that I've got a lot less progress in life at my age, now 51, than some other folks that probably didn't get bogged down by that kind of shame and that had advancements in life instead of degradations or setbacks due to their interactions with influential people. Okay, now back to where I was wanting to start out also at the beginning, is just to say again that this is an Aspiecast. It's a podcast for folks who want to think about real-life issues that can occur within the life of folks with Asperger's, and just to discuss some of the things that I've been through, and maybe that can help folks who have been through it as well, just by explaining what it's like. And for me, it's always helped to learn that there's other folks that have gone through the same thing, and it makes me feel a whole lot less alone, and definitely less defective, because I know it's not something that's specifically wrong with me. Okay, so I'm going to try and keep this short, and I'm trying to do it where, like I keep saying, that if I can do it shorter, it'll take less effort to put the episode together, because it does take me a while to go through all the maneuvers to get the recording properly formatted and remove a lot of my pauses where I say every 5 minutes, or every 5 seconds, and to remove my coughs and stuff like that. Okay, so I just want to mention also that this episode's going to have some vulgarities in it, so I recommend not having this episode audible for impressionable people, young kids, whatever. So just be cautious where you're listening, when you're listening, probably not safe for work. Okay, so here goes. I'm going to expand a little bit on the shame issue. I still, unfortunately, as much as I understand more about myself with Asperger's, I still find myself doing things that are extremely inappropriate, and I don't realize it. I think I'm being funny, and I realize that part of that is because I also don't understand a gray area between being very, very conservative and cautious and not interacting with people, which is one way to handle it so that you don't make any mistakes if you don't interact with people, and then going all the way to 100% or 110% in my case of interacting with people on a level that surpasses most boundaries that an ordinary conversation or interaction would entail. There's sort of a gray area in between that I just absolutely don't know how to navigate. I don't have anything inside me that tells me what the gray area should be like. I'm trying to learn rules for that, but here's sort of the story. And the other thing is, somebody did sort of explain that I go from 0 to 100% really quickly, and that's where I got this idea about the gray area in between. And I shouldn't call it gray area because that sounds a little negative, but more cautious and conservative without being completely disconnected is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so here's the story. This is where it gets vulgar. I was drinking some unfortunately intense concoctions, specifically Long Island iced tea, at a time several months back when, actually this would have been in November of 2015, and I remember that only because that's when I did an episode about this, and then I found it was too vulgar, so I didn't post the episode online. So anyway, here goes. I was drinking this stuff, and I got a little bit loosey-goosey, and that means I can try to be silly with people. And my versions of being silly with people, which is always intended to strictly give me more connections and things to talk about and whatnot, I was having a blast, and this person next to me started talking about some things that were quite ridiculous. I don't remember why, but he started telling people, and I don't know if it was me specifically, but it was out loud, that he had a 14-foot thing. Okay, and by thing, I mean thing. Okay, well, I always try to top people in a way. In fact, the Dilbert comic strip has a thing about a character called the Topper, and that just means he's trying to outdo people in whatever they're talking about. I try to outdo people in their silliness. So with this guy, I started asking him, can I see it? Well, that went a little bizarre. And I don't think he liked that, so he kind of calmed down. But a little bit later, he had to go to the bathroom, so I brought it up again. Maybe that was a perseveration issue, after having said it like 3 times before. And I said, oh, wow, can I go in there and see it, while you're going to the bathroom? And I think he got a sort of a real bad impression from that, and we didn't really talk much after that. So, I was just trying to be funny, and he was being vulgar, and I was trying to be more vulgar. Obviously, I would not go chase somebody into the bathroom and, stare at them while they're going to the bathroom. But again, this is sort of my sense of humor and I guess you'd say inappropriateness. At the same session while I was there, something else happened, and somebody, I think, was talking about birth control, and I believe it was the bartender. And for some reason, I piped up and said, well, I'm in favor of retroactive birth control. Now, I saw sort of a frowny face there, and then I realized what might have been interpreted from me. It might have sounded like I was thinking that it's, that I'm in favor of going and doing things with women and then expecting them to get an abortion because I didn't want to, take on contraceptive responsibility myself. Okay. Well, I realized what I said, and then I had to explain myself that retroactive birth control, what I meant was certain people should be unborn, and I think I gave the example of Donald Trump or something like that. And now I was joking about that, Mr. Trump, President Trump in the future. I don't want to go to Guantanamo, so sorry if you are the president. I was just using you as an example, Mr. Trump. Anyways, I said people like Donald Trump, probably are reasons why we should have retroactive birth control. And I said, well, besides that, I'm on the other team. And okay, so the lady next to me said, "Oh, so you'd like to f*** my boyfriend?" That just freaked me out. I mean, she said it out loud, and her boyfriend was sitting right there next to her. Well, that was kind of bizarre. Now, of course, I was still in the mood to be a little more extreme. So I said, "Well, no, I'd rather your boyfriend do me." And I don't think the boyfriend liked hearing that either. And I couldn't believe that I said that. And I guess it was because I had had 3 Long Island iced teas by that time. And I may not have said "do" out loud. I don't know what I said. But the conversation got a little more silly, but I did try to smooth things out, calm down. I realized what I had said. And it turned out this person sitting next to me was the bartender for the next shift. So I was also embarrassed because she had been sitting there with her boyfriend, and then she got behind the bar and she ended up, collecting the money and serving me and all that. So that was kind of awkward. And basically I left that place and I felt so amazingly ashamed for what I had said. First I'm telling a guy I want to follow him into the bathroom, and then I'm telling this lady's boyfriend who's sitting next, or telling her about her boyfriend that, I'd like him to pork me, okay? Totally trying to be funny. I was so ashamed for the next, 5 days, 10 days. I just couldn't handle it. And maybe that's a normal thing when people drink. For me, though, it was just a reminder that I have to very, very much watch out for drinking and then, being around people that are trying to be funny. Well, anyways, I end up going to this place in part because they, smile at me, and that's rare, so I can have conversations. And I kind of missed, having that experience a little bit. So I went back there maybe 3 weeks after this experience that I was so ashamed of. And I was telling the person in there that I was really ashamed to come back. I was telling the bartender, and she says, "No." She says, "First of all, this is that kind of place where people are just really, extreme sometimes." And then she said, "By the way, that other bartender whose boyfriend, you were talking about," she said that guy was so rad. Okay, now I don't quite understand what that means, and I asked her, I said, what do you mean rad? And my immediate thought was that this bartender had an extreme reaction about me being really bad. Well, it turns out she had a very strong reaction that I was an awesome guest or patron or whatever. She just had a blast, and I was just absolutely flabbergasted that in all my obnoxious vulgarity there out loud in a public spot, that somebody thought that I was really funny, and that it was some kind of enjoyable experience for her. I have a feeling it wasn't for her boyfriend. It's really bizarre probably to have somebody sitting next to you talking about that, and he, his girlfriend on the left saying things. So anyway, so this woman that turned out to be the bartender, she's the one that did say that she noticed I can go from 0 to 100%. And that's correct, because I had never talked to her before. I'd never seen her before. And, within a few seconds, I'm, engaging in some vulgarities that are quite intensely sexually overtoned, right, with her boyfriend, or engaging in the vulgarities with her about her boyfriend who was sitting there. Anyway, just real shocking experience. And I realized after thinking about that's probably been the case a lot, is I try to connect with people. I always want to connect with people, but I don't know how to do it in a cautious way. I just know that I don't want to not connect with people. I don't want to be there and not say anything. And the only thing I know how to do is jump into full connection mode, where I assume familiarity. I assume everybody's, going to have a laugh or something, or connect with me when I jump into the 100% and 110% realm of being silly. And I realize that has probably hurt me a lot, and I basically don't know how to do something in the middle. So again, I'm trying to learn about that kind of thing, trying to pay attention to myself. I think that's what's helped me a lot, by the way, over the years, is just paying attention to things and trying to get a little more attention to people's faces and seeing if I can discern an expression. And it is hard to discern expressions, at least for me. That matches what Asperger's folks have to deal with, where the brain functions for Asperger's people. Sometimes they can't tell a difference between or the parts of the brain that light up, but when shown a face versus an object, it's the same part. And in neurotypical folks, you have a different part of the brain light up when there's a human face being shown to you. So that partly relates to, I guess, being able to discern expressions and reactions and stuff like that. So anyways, that was my little story, and I was putting that forth in a episode, I think, last November, and then I just realized I had overdone it, and I think I didn't even use the F-bomb in there, which I did this time, but I'm trying to be honest about it. So anyway, the last comment here, again, I'm trying to keep it short so that I can maybe have a better chance of doing more of these. I've gotten some fantastic emails. There's even a listener in South Africa. Wonderful to hear from that far away. I absolutely have to say that the emails that I get are so heartfelt, so well written, total testament to the intelligence and skill and realities and emotions inside of anybody with Asperger's and their partners and who have sometimes written to me and parents. So really appreciate that. I've gotten some emails with suggested topics, which I definitely wanted, and I've gotten some emails with like lists of symptoms that people have experienced. And I think that's great too, because there's just a whole lot of symptoms and things that people have to deal with. And some of them I didn't even think about until reading various emails, and I realized that, gosh, that's quite relevant to me. But again, just to say, the main thing that I struggle with at this stage in life, where I've known about Asperger's, let's say, for 5 or more years, the main thing is the shame, and trying to figure out how do you avoid thinking about the shame. It can really stick. It can really come back and haunt you, and it can also, make you realize maybe that's why you're at a certain stage in life where you don't have many friends, or you're still single, or you've been, in a relationship and then it fizzled out for whatever reasons. And those reasons, for now, for me, come back and haunt me, because I realize now why people were telling me the things they were. One of which is I only am concerned about myself. So lots of stuff for talking about. Feel free to email me, of course. I love reading every email. I probably don't have time to respond to everyone, but I do attempt to when I have time. So again, thanks for listening. And the email address to connect is aspiecast@gmail.com. And I appreciate your listening, and I'm going to try to have a little more frequency to these episodes. I have no intent to do it twice a year only, which is what it seems like it's coming out to be, but there's just tons of stuff out there, and I definitely want to include topics that folks have emailed me to talk about. All right, thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time.